please consider subscribing to the channel. I post 2 times a week, on Monday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I recommend using headphones if you would like to hear the gentle mic brushing. Before I get started on tonight's case, please make sure that you are subscribed, and please leave it a like if you don't mind. Thank you so much. So tonight we are heading up to New Hampshire. Shout out to all my friends in New Hampshire. This case took place in 2006, and it is the case of Sheila LaBarre. So let's get right into it with some information about Sheila. She was born in Fort Payne, Alabama on the 4th of July, 1958. She was one of 6 siblings. Her father, unfortunately, was a very bad alcoholic, and he was known to have abused Sheila both physically and sexually when she was a child. It wasn't just her. Also, at least one of her sisters and her mother were abused by the father as well. But regardless, Sheila lived in constant fear of this man. She graduated high school in 1976, and although she had dreams of becoming a model, she found herself a job as a housekeeper at a motel. Sheila would go on to have several failed marriages. The first one was in 1981. It was New Year's Eve when she married John Baxter. He was 19 and she was 23. But this marriage lasted only 6 weeks because he found out that she had been locking his daughter. He had a daughter from another relationship. Sheila had supposedly been locking the daughter in a closet when he was not home. So that was it. They were done. So she moved on to husband number 2, and his name was Ronnie Jennings. He lived in Tennessee, Chattanooga to be exact, and she moved there to be with him. They had a very tumultuous relationship which lasted 4 years. At one point in the relationship, she was put in a psychiatric ward due to an attempt to take her own life. Ronnie said of Sheila later, quote, "She's just crazy, to put it bluntly. Sheila didn't care about anyone. She just wanted everything her way." End quote. Ronnie's mother had said of Sheila, quote, that Sheila would try to kill him with a pair of scissors, which leads me to believe that something had gone on between them having to do with scissors, or why would that be the weapon that he would be afraid of? But that's just me adding my 2 cents. So, as I said, they were together for years, and then they were done. In 1987, she met William LaBarre, or Bill LaBarre. He had placed a personal ad in the paper or magazine or something. He was looking for love, and he found her. At the time, he was 60 and she was 29, and he was a very wealthy chiropractor who also owned a farm. He was worth about $2 million. So, I mean, why wouldn't you want to be with him? People, in fact, said of him, why would he place an ad? I believe his ad told that he was, well off, and people would, of course, flock to him just for that reason. His farm was in Epping, New Hampshire, so up she moved to go be with him on his farm, and although they never married, she took his name anyway. Now, their relationship was not that great, as you can imagine, since none of them were. The police were called to the house many times due to domestic disputes, in which the police believed that Sheila was actually the aggressor. One time, she had pulled a gun on Bill, and she had shot at him. He was not actually hit with the gun, with a bullet, because he had successfully hid, but still, she had shot at him. People who knew Bill said that he had changed so much since Sheila moved in. He had turned into a very submissive man. Now, believe it or not, while she was living there with Bill, a man moved in to help with the farm, okay? His name was Wayne Ennis, and she became romantically involved with this guy. I guess Bill must have known about it, because in 1995, she married this guy, Wayne Ennis, and they continued to live there at the farm. In 1996, the police were called because Wayne claimed that Sheila had attacked him after he had caught her in bed with another man. So their marriage didn't last, and in 1996 they divorced. But he claims that she asked him to help kill Bill LaBarre, which he did not do. So she's keeping it moving now. She's done with Wayne. Time to move on. So she met a guy named James Brackett. They didn't get married, but that speak to them using sexual innuendos. Sheila began visiting homeless shelters as a place to pick up men, believe it or not. And one of these men who she picked up was named Michael Deloge. It was 2003, and he was 38. He had a history of drug and alcohol dependence, and she invited him to come and live with her, and of course off he went. They spent a lot of time together using drugs, studying sadistic material, and engaging in BDSM. That was said to be her thing with all these men. She was very into that. One day, she got Michael to make a videotape to send to his mother. And in the tape, he said, quote, "I'm starting to remember things about the past. You really messed me up. You really messed me up." End quote. And he told his mother that he never wanted to see her again. His mother said there's nothing from the past that she did that he could possibly be referring to. But it was more likely that Sheila had kind of convinced him that these things had happened as a way to, separate Michael from his family. And I guess it worked. One time, a neighbor saw Michael running out of the property with blood dripping off his head, and his ear had been sliced. Sounds like the scissors again, maybe. But by February of 2005, nobody ever heard from him again. Nobody ever saw him again. He seemed to have disappeared. And it was time for Sheila to find a new man. 1 year later, in February of 2006, Sheila got herself onto a phone dating site. Not site, it's a phone dating program. Nothing to do with the computer. in his cart. And Sheila was carrying on in Walmart. Witnesses called police to the store, but nothing ever came of it. I guess they probably asked him again, "Are you okay?" You know, and so long as he's saying he's okay, I'm guessing, but I think, you know, they really couldn't do anything. On March 23rd, Kenneth's mother called Sheila looking for him again because she wasn't hearing from him. And Sheila said that he doesn't live there anymore. He had left and said he was going back to Massachusetts. But, you know, obviously he hadn't. So the mom called the police. But also that same day, at 1 o'clock in the morning, Sheila called up the police herself. She played them a disturbing audio tape. On the tape, she was yelling at Kenneth and accusing him of abusing children, if you know what I mean. And you could hear Kenny in the tape agreeing with her, and you could hear him vomiting, and then she asked him to stop faking that he was fainting. I don't know why she would call the police to play that, but she did. Now, just so you know, before I go any further, there is no evidence to support the fact that Kenneth ever abused a child. Okay, so don't get it in your head that he did that. Nobody believes that he ever did such a thing. It was just that she had somehow gotten him to say that on the tape. So the police got themselves on over to her house. And they were outside the house and they saw a burn pit, and things were burning in it, which you're allowed to do. So it wasn't illegal. She was allowed to be doing that, but, you know, they went up and they looked into the burn pit. And one of the things they saw looked like a human bone, possibly a leg bone, with some flesh still attached. So they went to the door and they started knocking because they wanted to confront Sheila. So Sheila told them that Kenny wasn't there. She doesn't know where he is. She said they cannot take the bone. They wanted to take it with them, but she said, "You cannot take it." And they said, "What is this bone?" And she said, "It's either a rabbit or a PEDO. Strange thing to say to the police, right? So they had to leave and go get a search warrant. They had nothing on her at this point, other than that really strange statement and a possible human bone. And by the time they came back with the search warrant, the bone was gone. But don't worry, because she provided plenty more for them at that point. She was covered in ash, like she had gone through the burn pile or something, you know. She had a gun on her, which they took away. And they asked her if she had any more weapons. So she exposed her breasts to them to show she had no other weapons. This wasn't unusual for her. As I mentioned before, she did this kind of thing to the police all the time, and they did not like it. And she had "What's in the bag?" And she said, Kenny is in the bag. And there were a bunch of bones in the bag, which they sent off to a lab to find out what these bones were exactly. And they took her down to the station for questioning. They couldn't arrest her. They didn't have enough for that. So, she really didn't give them any useful information during the interrogation, and they had to let her go. But they said, "Don't go back to your house, we're still searching it." So a whole lot of police officers went to her house to do a full search. And here is what they found. They found Michael DeLoge's clothing. The man who disappeared prior to Kenneth moving in. There was blood on a knife blade. There was blood splattered in the kitchen, the living room, the dining room, and 2 bathrooms. There were various human bones and teeth found. There was evidence of older burn pits and blood splatters so old that it had layers of dust in it. When tests finally came back from the lab, DNA was found that matched both Michael and Kenny, and there were various toe bones found that matched neither of them, suggesting that there potentially was at least one more victim, could be more. On March 31st of 2006, they got an arrest warrant for Sheila, but she was gone. She had withdrawn $85,000 from the bank and hit the road. But they found her on April 2nd in Massachusetts. She had cut her hair and dyed it red and changed her name, but they knew who she was. She pled guilty by reason of insanity to murdering Michael DeLoge and Kenneth County. She said that the reason she did it was that she was ridding the world of PEDOs. But like I said before, there's no evidence to suggest that either of these men were ever that. That's just what she was saying or what she believed. The psychologist who was hired for the defense said that she either had a schizophrenic affect disorder or a delusional disorder that caused her to mistakenly believe that these men were PEDOs. He also said that she believes that she once died but was sent back to Earth as an angel with a mission to kill PEDOs. But there was another psychiatrist who was hired by the state to interview her, and he had a very different take on the situation. question is, should she have been found guilty by reason of insanity instead of just guilty as charged? I don't think so. Like I said, she was definitely mentally ill, no doubt about it. But she knew what she was doing was wrong. She covered it up. She didn't seem to be psychotic. You know, she knew who she was, where she was. She was very aware of what was happening. And she did this repetitively. It's a shame